Hello, welcome to the Plaid Sheep Oracle. This is a collective reading. And I'm going to say off the bat that it's going to be a really esoteric, kind of symbolic, metaphysical reading. Although there is some practical advice as well. And it does have to do with the current astrology happening, although it could easily apply to your life at some later point. So we begin with two underlying cards. There's the Messenger card from the Starseed Oracle. It says serious energy bringing harmony and balance. It certainly has sort of a Jesus feeling, yeah. And then is this Light Dancer card. So the two of them together are, there's this spirit figure with a sun at the heart. And then there's us reaching for that star, for that light that is there. So the astrology of the moment that this is related to. Number one, tomorrow, actually when this reading comes out on June 17th, Saturn stations retrograde in Pisces. He turns, he will go back to 0 Pisces. He won't re-enter Aquarius. And then on November 4th, he stations direct and will begin forward again. The shadow space, the space that he crosses back and forth, he's been in since early May and will exit in early February. So there's that. And then secondly, there's the new moon in Gemini on Sunday, the 18th. And then there's actually a third item, but we'll get to that later. So Saturn is all things physical. He's often seen as very restrictive and kind of authoritarian, that Saturn can get in our way if we have him in close proximity to another planet, or in some sort of difficult aspect to another planet in our natal chart. Or possibly by transit. But that's only kind of one view of Saturn. And I prefer to see him as structure, as containment, as caution, as planning, and certainly as that which makes everything that we touch and experience with our senses possible. So there's also two poems from my Year of Rilke. The first is today's date, June 16th, the day that I'm recording. See the flowers so faithful to earth. We know their fate because we share it. Were they to grieve for their wilting, that grief would be ours to feel. There's a lightness in things. Only we move forever burdened, pressing ourselves into everything, obsessed by weight. How strange and devouring our ways must seem to those for whom life is enough. If you could enter their dreaming and dream with them deeply, you would come back different to a different day, moving so easily from that common depth. Or maybe just stay there. They would bloom and welcome you, all those brothers and sisters tossing in the meadows, and you would be one of them. We'll get to the other poem a little bit later. I read that one because of this first card. Earth pulsing. It says, pulse of the mother, slow down, time in nature. And here is this figure lying among the flowers. So to reconsider how we see our lives, how we see Saturn, all those Saturny things. He is often also called the Lord of Time. So beginnings and endings, that things are also ephemeral. And that they happen in cycles. And also that there is a lot that is unseen. Processes and structures that are unseen, but that create life as we know it. And this is true both in nature as well as in our human civilizational lives. So many things are happening, people working, processes going on that we don't see. So opening ourselves up to receive information that maybe could not be seen before, and opening ourselves up to experiencing Saturn and all those earthy, perhaps previously seen as restrictive things in our life. So we have this karmic relationships card that says Orion energy, polarity, soul growth, conflict. But it's really more about seeing other possibilities. And also a little bit about the idea that the grass is greener. So both options are sort of available here in this image. One, that if you are in a situation that seems unwanted, that you may not be as restricted and held in place as you think, and that there are other choices. But also that if in this process you're comparing yourself or your life to somebody else's that seems so much better, it might not really be so, that if you could cross the fence and live on their grass, that you would see that it isn't really greener. That this comparison, there's perhaps longing for some ideal that you see in the distance that maybe you perceive somebody else as having, that you might not actually want it. There can be a stagnancy in something that is ideal as well. The blue flame. Spontaneous awakening, activation, integration time. And this is, I think, this awakening, this light that we are reaching for. That is really a different perception of our life and how we move through it and what actually exists. And that we're standing on this threshold, wanting to move forward, to embrace the blue light. But there's also fear. Fear and habit. That is kind of one of the the downside of Saturn energy. If you don't choose to embrace it and work with it, it can show up as habit, as being stuck somewhere in a particular pattern. You know, and one of the ways that Saturn was seen was as the end. It was thought to be the final planet of the solar system. It was the last that could be seen with the naked eye. So it formed this border. Plus it's got those rings, you know, that it was this container, this border. But in fact, there is more beyond. Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, asteroids, the rest of the galaxy and beyond. So it's not, right, it's not really a hard border. Not in the way that we thought. Or at least that we think, you know, now we have sort of a different border. In those ancient times, when astrology was being formed into what we have now as a system, there was this, right, this idea of Saturn as this border, the furthest thing out. And now we know that there's a whole universe and other planets, but we have a different kind of restriction. We have a very materialist view of life. That, you know, it's just this. It's just what we perceive with the traditional 5 senses or with instruments. That if it can't be measured in some way, then it doesn't exist. So we've created a different sort of Saturnian border for ourselves that we have to unlearn and transcend. So we get, one, the Star Ancestors card. Hidden secrets, lost wisdom, look a little deeper. So combining ideas from the past with what we know now. I think it's very interesting when people sort of revert entirely to an older system. There are some astrologers, for example, who will not look at Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto in someone's chart. But they will take this very traditional view, this go back to the system as it was. And if that works for them, then they should go off and do it. But for me, personally, that doesn't work. It doesn't make sense to me. We can't unknow what we know. And some of what we know is really fabulous. Medical astrology, for example, assigns planetary and sign rulerships to different parts of the body. But we know so much more now. So that, you know, this could change. We don't have to use necessarily the assignments that used to be. Or there can be, you know, sort of multiple assignments, a more nuanced view. Like fascia, for example, which are generally solid, but they can become kind of liquid. So are they both Aquarius and maybe Pisces? The liver is usually Jupiter. It's the largest organ in the body, an internal organ. But it does all these amazing things. It's got more than 500 chemical processes. One of which is to be discerning, to remove that which doesn't belong and send it on its way. And that's kind of both a Saturnian and a Plutonian sort of idea. So taking the old and combining it with the new. And this is kind of a Gemini idea. To not reject anything. That everything, every piece of information has some space, some use. Even if it's to tell you what not to do. And then we have surrender to the sweetness. Venus energy, pleasure, joy, make love to life. And that, actually, I should say, is a fourth astrological thing, which is Venus spending about 4 months in Leo this year, because she will go retrograde. She stations retrograde on July 22nd. And then she stations direct on September 3rd, but she won't leave Leo until October 4th, I think. So we're having this really lovely, sweet, creative, sunny, luscious, I want to say, Venusian summer. To go with this Saturn movement through Pisces. The structure in water. Because water does have structure. If you're into that sort of thing, go and look up the fourth state of water, or structured water. So things, you know, being so much more complex than perhaps we give them credit for. We really, you know, modern society doesn't really like complexity. We like things to be very straightforward and simple. Simple answers, right? Things that fit into 140 characters, bullet points, the elevator speech, taking a pill that will fix everything for you, seeing things in a dual way, either it's yes or no, either you're with me or against me. Good and evil. And there's an invitation here to be in the nuance, to be in the water. So, Three of Wands, where are you looking? Which way are you facing? Where is your attention going? About a week and a half ago, I actually stopped looking at Instagram and Facebook. And I've gotten pretty narrowly curated in both of those feeds. You know, it's mostly herbs and cats and recipes, knitting, tarot, astrology. But even so, it was still input, still stimulation, still lots and lots of other people's opinions about things, even about astrology. And the advice, the continued advice from guides, spirits, fellowship, my heart, was to just stop. Stop taking in all of that input. So, which way are you looking? Are you looking at those things that nourish you, uplift you, interest you? Lead you into flow? And this is not to say that you cannot see things that others might view as negative. But what's wanted is an expansive view. So you could be really interested in, you know, bioremediation of the soil. And to do that, you do have to look at contamination, which is kind of a negative thing. But are you looking solely at the contamination and getting into your head about all of that? Or are you looking at, you know, the way out? What are solutions? What are positive steps to be taken? What is the possible outcome that is expansive and interesting? You know, and do you listen solely to other people's opinions about these things? Or do you allow your own knowing, your own connection to the universe to bring you ideas, to bring you the Ace of Swords? Now, sometimes an idea can be sparked by another person, but it is still your idea, right? You and your soul coming together and having this idea, this breakthrough. Gemini's reading yesterday was all about the breakthrough, the big idea, the revelation. And there is this Gemini moon, this Gemini new moon that is opposite the galactic center. And the new moon, which can sort of symbolically reveal things, begin things. Not technically an eclipse, but a darkness. So this idea, and then we have the Knight of Swords, the Page of Swords, and the Five of Swords. all this air energy, all the possibilities. The possibilities of movement, of change. Of information coming in, being received, and then creating a whole new idea that can take you forward. And allowing that to arrive without needing external validation for your experience. And then once this new information, this new idea, this epiphany, once you've taken a hold of it, in your mind, in your heart, then we come into the fire. Queen of Wands. I love this Queen of Wands. She and her fabulous cat, awesome. And under her is this art card here in the Thoth deck. I think that this is where the interpretation of the Temperance card as alchemy really comes from, or is solidified. Because it's not temperance, right? It's art. It's the creation of something new. The mixing of fire and water. The new idea brought into form. And actually under that is wealth, the Ten of Pentacles. Bringing it all into physical matter. Saturn moving through Pisces is in part concerned with bringing the dream into reality. Bringing the imagination into form. And this idea that's here, this intellectual process, this Gemini energy can be part of that, right? If you've had this delicious Piscean dream, this sweetness, that's kind of where you've been floating in it. Now you may have the sense of how to actually bring it into physical form, into being. And to really enjoy the process. I mean, that is the message that is repeated. To enjoy the process. And so we get the Prince of Wands. Movement forward. And the Three of Wands again. Which way are you facing? Where are you going? Where is your energy going? Is it going towards thinking about disappointment? Stuff that's gone wrong? Failures of the past? Mistakes? Other people's catastrophizing? Your own catastrophizing? Or abundance, flow, Three of Cups, celebratory energy. Where is that energy going? And that's the flip side of Gemini, the galactic center space, Sagittarius energy. The Gemini-Sag axis of gathering all the information, combing through it, not judgmentally in a kind of way, but to judge what is for you and what is not. And then setting yourself forward to move forward. And I'm going to read the second poem. May what I do flow from me, from the Book of Hours. May what I do flow from me like a river, no forcing and no holding back, the way it is with children. Then in these swelling and ebbing currents, these deepening tides moving out, returning, I will sing you as no one ever has, streaming through widening channels into the open sea. Saturn in Pisces. Singing it into being. So, Sorcerer's Violet. The connection to the all that is, to source, the through line through the crown chakra and through the heart. And then the synthesis in the third eye and the intellect. And then hemlock. Hemlock is a plant of liminal spaces. Both literally, it tends to grow at the sides of roads, along waterways, but also as in its poisonous effect, although it has been used as a medicine. And it is often a part of recipes for flying ointments to take you into other spaces. Now, I don't think that we actually need substances to allow us into those liminal metaphysical spaces. But I think they do make it easier. You can also work with plants metaphysically, with their spirit. And hemlock is generally seen as falling under the domain of Saturn. And Venus together. Saturn and Venus. Saturn moving through the imaginal, dreamlike space of Pisces. And Pisces is often seen sort of as the oldest sign. But I think there's, the Pisces that I know all have, when they let it out, a childlike aspect that wants to dance. I think that's some of Pisces energy, this sweetness. So Saturn in Pisces and then Venus in Leo. Surrender to the sweetness. So the scarab. Another liminal figure. the dung beetle, and who pushed the sun across the Egyptian sky. A symbol of death and resurrection. And I think these are probably Isis and Osiris on the scarab's body. And the scarab too is, the dung beetle is pretty amazing. Can lift and move objects many times its own weight. Like a human lifting several 18-wheel semi-trucks and rolling them. Great strength in its hard shell body. More Saturn imagery. And then Eagle One. This combination of seeing, the ability to see, and then the feminine nature of receptivity. So to be able to see, to take it in, and then to receive it. And also at times to go and take it. Combinations of energies. And actually not so much in an alchemical sense, but in a combination sense, things remaining distinct but working together. This and that. So the alchemical nature of Saturn in Pisces and Venus in Leo. Water and fire merging to create something new, but also remaining distinctly themselves and acting in concert. And then at the bottom of this deck, we have Ishtar. And she is the fourth astrological aspect. She is currently at about 6 degrees of Scorpio. She's also moving retrograde currently. But that makes her trine Saturn. She is an earlier incarnation of Venus. And she's kind of a combination of Venus and Ceres and Proserpina or Persephone, because she can move from the surface to the underworld. She's one of the creators of the seasons, the power of nature. A goddess of both realms, and she is, as Venus, both morning star and evening star. So all of this Venusian, creative, but also composting energy, both poison and medicine. This invitation to light as well as to nuance. to partnership and to alchemy. So, advice. Not surprisingly, Three of Wands comes out again. Where are you looking? And because we can't have a reading without it, apparently, the corpse. Leaving the corpse behind. And under the corpse is actually the Five of Pentacles. Loss, lack, a sense of being left out, of not having resources, of being pushed out of the group. Of being deprived, of being victimized. Is that where your attention is going? Or is it going elsewhere, outward? To the Magician. To the Creator. I think he's generally linked with Mercury, but he has a lot to do with Saturn because he brings things into being. So Mercury in Gemini, where I think he actually is at this moment. And then Saturn in Pisces. Nine of Pentacles. Sovereignty over the physical realm. Knowing that you are affluent. Knowing that you have power to create and to receive. And that this is often thought of as a card of independence, but I would say it's a card of interdependence. And understanding that you are part of it all. Six of Wands, confidence, victory, going forth, right? You got your Three of Wands, you've picked your direction, and now you've gotten on your horse and you're going. Having declared victory already. Because you are here and you are alive. And the whole thing is fun and joyful. And then, of course, the High Priestess. Connection to your wider self, to your fellowship, to the all that is. All the time. Not just at those moments when you might go and sit in meditation, but everywhere, all the time. Take time in your day to feel it. To feel that connection. Right before you go into a meeting, or maybe even in the meeting. What is happening in the meeting? From a metaphysical perspective. Feel into that space. Or when you're cooking dinner, or washing the dishes. Really be there, really be in this space of the light dancer. Illumination, radiant self, shining soul. We are here for this human, physical, juicy existence. To love all of it. Feel for the soul of the world throughout the day. So there it is. I think we're expanding. And I'm glad you're here for this journey with me, for this process, for this beingness. I wish you all the very, very best, and I will see you next time. So long.